the psychic prana. According to the yogis, there are two nerve currents in the spinal column, called Pingala and Ida, and a hollow canal called Sushumna running through the spinal cord. At the lower end of the hollow canal is what the yogis call the lotus of the Kundalini. They describe it as triangular in form, in which, in the symbolical language of the yogis, there is a power called the Kundalini coiled up. When that Kundalini awakes, it tries to force a passage through this hollow canal, and as it rises step by step, as it were, layer after layer of the mind becomes open, and all the different visions and wonderful powers come to the yogi. When it reaches the brain, the yogi is perfectly detached from the body and mind. The soul finds itself free. We know that the spinal cord is composed in a peculiar manner. If we take the figure 8 horizontally, there are two parts which are connected in the middle. Suppose you add 8 after 8, piled one on top of the other. That will represent the spinal cord. The left is the Ida, the right the Pingala, and that hollow canal which runs through the centre of the spinal cord is the Sushumna. Where the spinal cord ends in some of the lumbar vertebrae, a fine fibre issues downwards, and the canal runs up, even within that fibre, only much finer. The canal is closed at the lower end, which is situated near what is called the sacral plexus, which according to modern physiology is triangular in form. The different plexuses that have their centres in the spinal canal can very well stand for the different lotuses of the yogi. The yogi conceives of several centres, beginning with the Muladhara, the basic, and ending with the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petalled lotus in the brain. So, if we take these different plexuses as representing these lotuses, the idea of the yogi can be understood very easily in the language of modern physiology. We know there are two sorts of actions in these nerve currents, one afferent, the other efferent, one sensory, the other motor, one centripetal and the other centrifugal. One carries the sensations to the brain, and the other from the brain to the outer body. These vibrations are all connected with the brain in the long run. Several other facts we have to remember in order to clear the way for the explanation which is to come. The spinal cord at the brain ends in a sort of bulb in the medulla, which is not attached to the brain, but floats in a fluid in the brain, so that if there be a blow on the head, the force of that blow will be dissipated in the fluid and will not hurt the bulb. This is an important fact to remember. Secondly, we have also to know that, of all the centres, we have particularly to remember 3. The Muladhara, the basic, the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petalled lotus of the brain, and the Manipura, the lotus of the navel. Next, we shall take one fact from physics. We all hear of electricity and various other forces connected with it. What electricity is, no one knows, but so far as it is known, it is a sort of motion. There are various other motions in the universe. What is the difference between them and electricity? Suppose this table moves, that the molecules which compose this table are moving in different directions. If they're all made to move in the same direction, it will be through electricity. Electric motion makes the molecules of a body move in the same direction. If all the air molecules in a room are made to move in the same direction, it will make a gigantic battery of electricity of the room. Another point from physiology we must remember, that the centre which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, has a sort of controlling action over the system of nerve currents. Now we shall see why breathing is practiced. In the first place, from rhythmical breathing comes a tendency of all the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. When mind changes into will, the nerve currents change into emotions similar to electricity, because the nerves have been proved to show polarity under the action of electric currents. This shows that when the will is transformed into the nerve currents, it is changed into something like electricity. When all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, the body has, as it were, become a gigantic battery of will. This tremendous will is exactly what the yogi wants. This is, therefore, a physiological explanation of the breathing exercise. It tends to bring a rhythmic action in the body and helps us, through the respiratory centre, to control the other centres. The aim of pranayama here is to rouse the coiled up power in the Muladhara, called the Kundalini. Everything that we see or imagine or dream, we have to perceive in space. This is the ordinary space, called the Mahakasha, or elemental space. When a yogi reads the thoughts of other men, or perceives supersensuous objects, he sees them in another sort of space, called the Chittakasha, the mental space. When perception has become objectless, and the soul shines in its own nature, it is called the Chidakasha, or knowledge space. When the Kundalini is aroused and enters the canal of the Sushumna, all the perceptions are in the mental space. When it has reached the end of the canal which opens out into the brain, the objectless perception is in the knowledge space. Taking the analogy of electricity, we find that man can send a current only along a wire, but nature requires no wires to send her tremendous currents. This proves that the wire is not really necessary, but that only our inability to dispense with it compels us to use it. Similarly, all the sensations and motions of the body are being sent into the brain and sent out of it through these wires of nerve fibers. The columns of sensory and motor fibers in the spinal cord are the Ida and Pingala of the yogis. They are the main channels through which the afferent and the efferent currents travel. But why should not the mind send news without any wire, or react without any wire? We see this done in nature. The yogi says, if you can do that, you have got rid of the bondage of matter. How to do it? If you can make the current pass through the Sushumna, the canal in the middle of the spinal column, you have solved the problem. The mind has made this network of the nervous system and has to break it so that no wires will be required to work through. Then alone will all knowledge come to us. No more bondage of the body. That is why it is so important that we should get control of that Sushumna. If we can send the mental current through the hollow canal without any nerve fibers to act as wires, the yogi says the problem is solved, and he also says it can be done. This Sushumna is in ordinary persons closed up at the lower extremity. No action comes through it. The yogi proposes a practice by which it can be opened, and the nerve currents made to travel through. When a sensation is carried to a centre, the centre reacts. This reaction, in the case of automatic centres, is followed by motion. In the case of conscious centres, it is followed first by perception and secondly by motion. All perception is the reaction to action from outside. How then do perceptions in dream arise? There is then no action from outside. The sensory motions, therefore, are coiled up somewhere. For instance, I see a city. The perception of that city is from the reaction to the sensations brought from outside objects comprising that city. That is to say, a certain motion in the brain molecules has been set up by the motion in the intercarrying nerves, which again are set in motion by external objects in the city. Now, even after a long time, I can remember the city. This memory is exactly the same phenomenon, only it is in a milder form. But whence is the action that sets up even the milder form of similar vibrations in the brain? Not certainly from the primary sensations. Therefore, it must be that the sensations are coiled up somewhere, and they, by their acting, bring out the mild reaction which we call dream perception. Now the centre where all these residual sensations are, as it were, stored up, is called the Muladhara, the root receptacle, and the coiled up energy of action is Kundalini, the coiled up. It is very probable that the residual motor energy is also stored up in the same centre, as, after deep study or meditation on external objects, the part of the body where the Muladhara centre is situated, probably the sacral plexus, gets heated. Now if this coiled up energy be roused and made active, and then consciously made to travel up the Sushumna canal, as it acts upon centre after centre, a tremendous reaction will set in. When a minute portion of energy travels along a nerve fibre and causes reaction from centres, the perception is either dream or imagination. But when, by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy stored up travels along the Sushumna and strikes the centres, the reaction is tremendous, immensely superior to the reaction of dream or imagination, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception. It is supersensuous perception. And when it reaches the metropolis of all sensations, the brain, the whole brain as it were reacts, and the result is the full blaze of illumination, the perception of the self. As this Kundalini force travels from centre to centre, layer after layer of the mind, as it were, opens up, and this universe is perceived by the yogi in its fine or causal form. Then alone the causes of this universe, both as sensation and reaction, are known as they are, and hence comes all knowledge. The causes being known, the knowledge of the effects is sure to follow. Thus the rousing of the Kundalini is the one and only way to attaining divine wisdom, superconscious perception, realization of the spirit. The rousing may come in various ways, through love for God, through the mercy of perfected sages, or through the power of the analytic will of the philosopher. Wherever there was any manifestation of what is ordinarily called supernatural power or wisdom, there a little current of Kundalini must have found its way into the Sushumna. Only in the vast majority of such cases, people had ignorantly stumbled on some practice which set free a minute portion of the coiled-up Kundalini. All worship, consciously or unconsciously, leads to this end. The man who thinks that he is receiving response to his prayers does not know that the fulfillment comes from his own nature, that he has succeeded, by the mental attitude of prayer, in waking up a bit of this infinite power which is coiled up within himself. What thus men ignorantly worship under various names, through fear and tribulation, the yogi declares to the world to be the real power coiled up in every being, the mother of eternal happiness, if we but know how to approach her. And Raja Yoga is the science of religion, the rationale of all worship, all prayers, forms, ceremonies, and miracles. The control of psychic prana. We have now to deal with the exercises in pranayama. We have seen that the first step, according to the yogis, is to control the motion of the lungs. What we want to do is to feel the finer motions that are going on in the body. Our minds have become externalized and have lost sight of the fine motions inside. If we can begin to feel them, we can begin to control them. These nerve currents go on all over the body, bringing life and vitality to every muscle, but we do not feel them. The yogi says we can learn to do so. How? By taking up and controlling the motion of the lungs. When we have done that for a sufficient length of time, we shall be able to control the finer motions. We now come to the exercises in pranayama. Sit upright. The body must be kept straight. The spinal cord, although not attached to the vertebral column, is yet inside of it. If you sit crookedly, you disturb this spinal cord, so let it be free. Any time that you sit crookedly and try to meditate, you do yourself an injury. The three parts of the body, the chest, the neck, and the head, must always be held straight in one line. You will find that by a little practice, this will come to you as easy as breathing. The second thing is to get control of the nerves. We have said that the nerve centre that controls the respiratory organs has a sort of controlling effect on the other nerves, and rhythmical breathing is therefore necessary. The breathing that we generally use shouldn't be called breathing at all. It is very irregular. Then there are some natural differences of breathing between men and women. The first lesson is just to breathe in a measured way, in and out. That will harmonize the system. When you have practiced this for some time, you will do well to join to it the repetition of some word, as Om, or any other sacred word. In India we use certain symbolical words instead of just counting 1, 2, 3, 4. That is why I advise you to join the mental repetition of the Om or some other sacred word to the pranayama. Let the word flow in and out with the breath, rhythmically, harmoniously, and you will find the whole body is becoming rhythmical. Then you will learn what rest is. Compared with it, sleep is not rest. Once this rest comes, the most tired nerves will be calmed down, and you will find that you have never before really rested. The first effect of this practice is perceived in the change of expression of one's face. Harsh lines disappear. With calm thought, calmness comes over the face. Next comes beautiful voice. I never saw a yogi with a croaking voice. These signs come after a few months' practice. After practicing the above-mentioned breathing for a few days, you should take up a higher one. Slowly fill the lungs with breath through the Idar, the left nostril, and at the same time concentrate the mind on the nerve current. You are, as it were, sending the nerve current down the spinal column and striking violently on the last plexus, the basic lotus, which is triangular in form, the seat of the Kundalini. Then hold the current there for some time. Imagine that you're slowly drawing that nerve current with the breath through the other side, the Pingala. Then slowly throw it out through the right nostril. This you will find a little difficult to practice. The easiest way is to stop the right nostril with the thumb, and then slowly draw in the breath through the left. Then close both nostrils with thumb and forefinger, and imagine that you're sending that current down and striking the base of the Sushumna. Then take the thumb off and let the breath out through the right nostril. Next, inhale slowly through that nostril, keeping the other closed by the forefinger, then close both as before. The way the Hindus practiced this would be very difficult for this country, because they do it from their childhood, and their lungs are prepared for it. Here, it is well to begin with 4 seconds and slowly increase. Draw in 4 seconds, hold in 16 seconds, then throw out in 8 seconds. This makes 1 pranayama. At the same time, think of the basic lotus, triangular in form. Concentrate the mind on that centre. The imagination can help you a great deal. The next breathing is slowly drawing the breath in, and then immediately throwing it out slowly, and then stopping the breath out using the same numbers. The only difference is that in the first case the breath was held in, and in the second held out. The last is the easier one. The breathing in which you hold the breath in the lungs must not be practiced too much. Do it only 4 times in the morning and 4 times in the evening. Then you can slowly increase the time and number. You will find that you have the power to do so, and that you take pleasure in it. So very carefully and cautiously increase as you feel that you have the power, to 6 instead of 4. It may injure you if you practice it irregularly. Of the 3 processes for the purification of the nerves described above, the first and the last are neither difficult nor dangerous. The more you practice the first one, the calmer you will be. Just think of Om, and you can practice, even while you're sitting at your work. You will be all the better for it. Someday, if you practice hard, the Kundalini will be aroused. For those who practice once or twice a day, just a little calmness of the body and mind will come, and a beautiful voice. Only for those who can go on further with it will Kundalini be aroused, and the whole of nature will begin to change, and the book of knowledge will open up. No more will you need to go to books for knowledge. Your own mind will have become your book, containing infinite knowledge. I have already spoken of the Idar and Pingala currents, flowing through either side of the spinal column, and also of the Sushumna, the passage through the centre of the spinal cord. These three are present in every animal. Whatever being has a spinal column has these three lines of action. But the yogis claim that in an ordinary man, the Sushumna is closed. Its action is not evident, while that of the other two is carrying power to different parts of the body. The yogi alone has the Sushumna open. When this Sushumna current opens and begins to rise, we get beyond the senses. Our minds become supersensuous, superconscious. We get beyond even the intellect, where reasoning cannot reach. To open that Sushumna is the prime object of the yogi. According to him, along this Sushumna are ranged these centres, or in more figurative language, these lotuses as they are called. The lowest one is at the lower end of the spinal cord and is called Muladhara. The next higher is called Svadhisthana. The third, Manipura. The fourth, Anahata. The fifth, Vishuddha. The sixth, Ajna. And the last, which is in the brain, is the Sahasrara, or the 1,000-petaled. Of these, we have to take cognition just now of two centres only, the lowest, the Muladhara, and the highest, the Sahasrara. All energy has to be taken up from its seat in the Muladhara and brought to the Sahasrara. The yogis claim that of all the energies that are in the human body, the highest is what they call ojas. Now this ojas is stored up in the brain, and the more ojas is in a man's head, the more powerful he is, the more intellectual, the more spiritually strong. One man may speak beautiful language and beautiful thought, but they do not impress people. Another man speaks neither beautiful language nor beautiful thoughts, yet his words charm. Every movement of his is powerful. That is the power of ojas. Now in every man there is more or less of this ojas stored up. All the forces that are working in the body in their highest become ojas. You must remember that it is only a question of transformation. The same force which is working outside as electricity or magnetism will become changed into inner force. The same force that is working as muscular energy will be changed into ojas. The yogis say that that part of the human energy which is expressed as sex energy in sexual thought, when checked and controlled, easily becomes changed into ojas, and as the Muladhara guides these, the yogi pays particular attention to that centre. He tries to take up all this sexual energy and convert it into ojas. It is only the chaste man or woman who can make the ojas rise and store it in the brain. That is why chastity has always been considered the highest virtue. A man feels that if he is unchaste, spirituality goes away. He loses mental vigour and moral stamina. That is why in all the religious orders in the world which have produced spiritual giants, you will always find absolute chastity insisted upon. That is why the monks came into existence, giving up marriage. There must be perfect chastity in thought, word and deed. Without it, the practice of Raja Yoga is dangerous and may lead to insanity. If people practice Raja Yoga and at the same time lead an impure life, how can they expect to become yogis? Prachahara and Dharana. The next step is called Prachahara. What is this? You know how perceptions come. First of all, there are the external instruments, then the internal organs acting in the body through the brain centers, and there is the mind. When these come together and attach themselves to some external object, then we perceive it. At the same time, it is a very difficult thing to concentrate the mind and attach it to one organ only. The mind is a slave. We hear, "Be good," and "be good," and "be good," taught all over the world. There is hardly a child born in any country in the world who has not been told, "Do not steal," "Do not tell a lie," but nobody tells the child how he can help doing them. Talking will not help him. Why should he not become a thief? We do not teach him how not to steal. We simply tell him, "Do not steal." Only when we teach him to control his mind do we really help him. All actions, internal and external, occur when the mind joins itself to certain centers, called the organs. Willingly or unwillingly, it is drawn to join itself to the centers, and that is why people do foolish deeds and feel miserable, which if the mind were under control, they wouldn't do. What would be the result of controlling the mind? It would then not join itself to the centers of perception, and naturally, feeling and willing would be under control. It is clear so far. Is it possible? It is perfectly possible. You see it in modern times. The faith healers teach people to deny misery and pain and evil. Their philosophy is rather roundabout, but it is a part of yoga upon which they have somehow stumbled. Where they succeeded in making a person throw off suffering by denying it, they really use a part of Prachahara as they make the mind of the person strong enough to ignore the senses. The hypnotists, in a similar manner, by their suggestion, excite in the patient a sort of morbid Prachahara for the time being. The so-called hypnotic suggestion can only act upon a weak mind, and until the operator, by means of fixed gaze or otherwise, has succeeded in putting the mind of the subject in a sort of passive, morbid condition, his suggestions never work. Now the control of the centers which is established in a hypnotic patient or a patient of faith healing by the operator for a time is reprehensible, because it leads to ultimate ruin. It is not really controlling the brain centers by the power of one's own will, but is, as it were, stunning the patient's mind for a time by sudden blows which another's will delivers to it. It is not checking, by means of reins and muscular strength, the mad career of a fiery team, but rather by asking another to deliver heavy blows on the heads of the horses to stun them for a time into gentleness. At each one of these processes, the man operated upon loses a part of his mental energies, till at last the mind, instead of gaining the power of perfect control, becomes a shapeless, powerless mass, and the only goal of the patient is the lunatic asylum. Every attempt at control which is not voluntary, not with the controller's own mind, is not only disastrous, but it defeats the end. The goal of each soul is freedom, mastery, freedom from the slavery of matter and thought, mastery of external and internal nature. instead of leading towards that, every will current from another, in whatever form it comes, either as direct control of organs or as forcing to control them while under a morbid condition, only rivets one link more to the already existing heavy chain of bondage of past thoughts, past superstitions. Therefore, beware how you allow yourselves to be acted upon by others. Beware how you unknowingly bring another to ruin. True, some succeed in doing good to many, for a time, by giving a new trend to their propensities. But at the same time, they bring ruin to millions by the unconscious suggestions they throw around, rousing in men and women that morbid, passive, hypnotic condition which makes them almost soulless at last. Whosoever, therefore, asks anyone to believe blindly, or drags people behind him by the controlling power of his superior will, does an injury to humanity, though he may not intend it. Therefore, use your own minds. Control body and mind yourselves. Remember that until you are a diseased person, no extraneous will can work upon you. Avoid everyone, however great and good he may be, who asks you to believe blindly. All over the world there have been dancing and jumping and howling sects, who spread like infection when they begin to sing and dance and preach. They also are a sort of hypnotists. They exercise a singular control for the time being over sensitive persons, alas, often, in the long run, to degenerate whole races. It is healthier for the individual or the race to remain wicked than be made apparently good by such morbid extraneous control. One's heart sinks to think of the amount of injury done to humanity by such irresponsible yet well-meaning religious fanatics. They little know that the minds which attain to sudden spiritual upheaval under their suggestions, with music and prayers, are simply making themselves passive, morbid, and powerless, and opening themselves to any other suggestions, be it ever so evil. Little do these ignorant, deluded persons dream that whilst they are congratulating themselves upon their miraculous power to transform human hearts, which power they think was poured upon them by some being above the clouds, they are sowing the seeds of future decay, of crime, of lunacy, and of death. Therefore beware of everything that takes away your freedom. Know that it is dangerous, and avoid it by all the means in your power. He who has succeeded in attaching or detaching his mind to or from the centres at will has succeeded in Prachahara, which means gathering towards, checking the outgoing powers of the mind, freeing it from the thraldom of the senses. When we can do this, we shall really possess character. Then alone we shall have taken a long step towards freedom. Before that, we are mere machines. How hard it is to control the mind. Well has it been compared to the maddened monkey. There was a monkey, restless by his own nature, as all monkeys are. As if that were not enough, someone made him drink freely of wine, so that he became still more restless. Then a scorpion stung him. When a man is stung by a scorpion, he jumps about for a whole day. So the poor monkey found his condition worse than ever. To complete his misery, a demon entered into him. What language can describe the uncontrollable restlessness of that monkey? The human mind is like that monkey, incessantly active by its own nature. Then it becomes drunk with the wine of desire, thus increasing its turbulence. After desire takes possession, comes the sting of the scorpion of jealousy at the success of others. And last of all, the demon of pride enters the mind, making it think itself of all importance. How hard to control such a mind. The first lesson, then, is to sit for some time and let the mind run on. The mind is bubbling up all the time. It is like that monkey jumping about. Let the monkey jump as much as he can. You simply wait and watch. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what the mind is doing, you can't control it. Give it the rein. Many hideous thoughts may come into you. You'll be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts. But you'll find that each day the mind's vagaries are becoming less and less violent, that each day it is becoming calmer. In the first few months you'll find that the mind will have a great many thoughts. Later you'll find that they have somewhat decreased, and in a few more months there will be fewer and fewer, until at last the mind will be under perfect control. But we must patiently practice every day. As soon as the steam is turned on, the engine must run. As soon as things are before us, we must perceive. So a man, to prove that he is not a machine, must demonstrate that he is under the control of nothing. This controlling of the mind, and not allowing it to join to the centres, is Prachahara. How is this practiced? It is a tremendous work, not to be done in a day. Only after patient, continuous struggle for years can we succeed. After you have practiced Prachahara for a time, take the next step, Dharana, holding the mind to certain points. What is meant by holding the mind to certain points? Forcing the mind to feel certain parts of the body to the exclusion of others. For instance, try to feel only the hand to the exclusion of other parts of the body. When the chitta, or mind stuff, is confined and limited to a certain place, it is dharana. This dharana is of various sorts, and along with it, it is better to have a little play of the imagination. For instance, the mind should be made to think of one point in the heart. That is very difficult. An easier way is to imagine a lotus there. That lotus is full of light, effulgent light. Put the mind there. Or think of the lotus in the brain as full of light, or the different centres in the Sushumna mentioned before. The yogi must always practice. He should try to live alone. The companionship of different sorts of people distracts the mind. He should not speak much, because to speak distracts the mind. Not work much, because too much work distracts the mind. The mind cannot be controlled after a whole day's hard work. One observing the above rules becomes a yogi. Such is the power of yoga that even the least of it will bring a great amount of benefit. It will not hurt anyone, but will benefit everyone. First of all, it will tone down nervous excitement, bring calmness, enable us to see things more clearly. The temperament will be better, and the health will be better. Sound health will be one of the first signs, and a beautiful voice. Defects in the voice will be changed. This will be among the first of the many effects that will come. Those who practice hard will get many other signs. Sometimes there will be sounds, as a peal of bells heard at a distance, commingling and falling on the ear as one continuous sound. Sometimes things will be seen, little specks of light floating and becoming bigger and bigger. And when these things come, know that you're progressing fast. Those who want to be yogis and practice hard must take care of their diet at first, but for those who want only a little practice for everyday business sort of life, let them not eat too much, otherwise they may eat whatever they please. For those who want to make rapid progress and to practice hard, a strict diet is absolutely necessary. They will find it advantageous to live only on milk and cereals for some months. As the organization becomes finer and finer, it will be found in the beginning that the least irregularity throws one out of balance. One bit of food more or less will disturb the whole system until one gets perfect control, and then one will be able to eat whatever one likes. When one begins to concentrate, the dropping of a pin will seem like a thunderbolt going through the brain. As the organs get finer, the perceptions get finer. These are the stages through which we have to pass, and all those who persevere will succeed. Give up all argumentation and other distractions. Is there anything in dry intellectual jargon? It only throws the mind off its balance and disturbs it. Things of subtler planes have to be realized. Will talking do that? So give up all vain talk. Read only those books which have been written by persons who have had realization. Be like the pearl oyster. There is a pretty Indian fable to the effect that if it rains when the star Swati is in the ascendant, and a drop of rain falls into an oyster, that drop becomes a pearl. The oysters know this, so they come to the surface when that star shines, and wait to catch the precious raindrop. When a drop falls into them, quickly the oysters close their shells and dive down to the bottom of the sea, there to patiently develop the drop into the pearl. We should be like that. First hear, then understand, and then, leaving all distractions, shut your minds to the outside influences and devote yourselves to developing the truth within you. There is the danger of frittering away your energies by taking up any idea only for its novelty, and then giving it up for another that is newer. Take one thing up and do it, and see the end of it, and before you have seen the end, do not give it up. He who can become mad with an idea, he alone sees light. Those that only take a nibble here and a nibble there will never attain anything. They may titillate their nerves for a moment, but there it will end. They will be slaves in the hands of nature and will never get beyond the senses. Those who really want to be yogis must give up once for all this nibbling at things. Take up one idea. Make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea, and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success, and this is the way great spiritual giants are produced. Others are mere talking machines. If we really want to be blessed and to make others blessed, we must go deeper. The first step is not to disturb the mind, not to associate with persons whose ideas are disturbing. All of you know that certain persons, certain places, certain foods repel you. Avoid them. And those who want to go to the highest must avoid all company, good or bad. Practice hard. Whether you live or die doesn't matter. You have to plunge in and work without thinking of the result. If you're brave enough, in 6 months you will be a perfect yogi. But those who take up just a bit of it and a little of everything else make no progress. It is of no use simply to take a course of lessons. To those who are full of tamas, ignorant and dull, those whose minds never get fixed on any idea, who only crave for something to amuse them, religion and philosophy are simply objects of entertainment. These are the unpersevering. They hear talk, think it very nice, and then go home and forget all about it. To succeed, you must have tremendous perseverance, tremendous will. I will drink the ocean, says the persevering soul. At my will, mountains will crumble. Have that sort of energy, that sort of will. Work hard, and you will reach the goal.